A police officer humiliated a black entrepreneur, accusing him without reason and flaunting his power as if it were absolute. But a year later, when his own career falls apart, he unexpectedly finds himself at the doorstep of that very man's company, forced to ask for a job. No one would believe what happens next for both of them. But let's start from the very beginning. Darius Brown, a successful black entrepreneur and the new director of a well-known consulting company, is on his way to an important client meeting that could secure a multi-million-dollar contract. He is dressed in a business suit, driving an expensive car, exuding a sense of sophistication and class. At a green light on one of the city intersections, just as he is about to proceed, he hears the blare of a police siren and sees a patrol car pulling up beside him. He stops, confused, as he hasn't broken the speed limit or any other rules. Approaching his car is Officer Mike Randolph, a large white man with a cold stare and a visible sense of hostility. Mike signals for Darius to roll down his window. As Darius complies, Mike, without introducing himself or explaining the reason for the stop, impatiently demands to see his documents. Darius calmly hands over his license and registration, but Mike looks at them with a disapproving frown and sarcastically asks how someone like him could afford such a car. Understanding the officer's tone, Darius calmly explains that he works and earns his living honestly. But Mike only increases the pressure, claiming that people like you rarely drive these cars on honest money. Darius keeps his composure, explains that he's in a hurry to get to a meeting, and asks for his documents back. Instead, Mike demands that he step out of the car and place his hands on the hood for a search. Darius recognizes the prejudice and humiliation, but complies to avoid further issues. On the street, Mike intentionally creates a tense situation, frisking Darius in front of bystanders as if he were a criminal. Pedestrians watch, and Darius feels humiliation boiling inside him. Mike conducts a long, showy search, commenting that people like you are always tied to drugs. He finds nothing but a business tablet and company documents, returning them with a look of contempt, as if they were part of some scheme. After the prolonged search, Mike, without apologizing, simply walks away, throwing over his shoulder, "You're free to go." Darius has already lost valuable time on the way to his meeting, which is now ruined. He sits in his car, feeling searing humiliation and inner anger, realizing that his status and success mean nothing to those who only see the color of his skin. He heads home, replaying the incident in his mind, and, for the first time, deeply considers that something needs to change. After the incident with Mike Randolph, Darius can't find peace. He replays every detail of the roadside humiliation, unable to shake it from his mind. It's as if he's trapped in his own thoughts, reliving the moment when his success and status were erased by a look of bias and harsh words. His confidence and inner calm are shaken. He begins to wonder if it's even worth fighting for respect in a society that judges him by his skin color. Friends and colleagues who learn about the incident try to support him, urging him to file a complaint against Randolph. But Darius, knowing how often the system protects its own, hesitates, thinking this step could damage his reputation. He also fears that filing a report might draw unwanted attention to his business, as these kinds of stories often backfire on the victim. However, under pressure from his loved ones, especially his wife Lisa, who sees how deeply it has affected him, Darius decides to act. He files a complaint with the police department, describing Mike Randolph's behavior in detail. In his statement, he emphasizes that the incident was purely racially motivated, as he had committed no violations and his documents were in order. A few days later, he receives a written response from the department stating that his complaint was dismissed due to lack of evidence and that the officer's actions were within acceptable limits. This news fills him with rage. Darius realizes that the incident is just a small part of a much larger issue, a system that shields those who engage in discriminatory behavior. He then decides to go public, recording a video explaining what happened. He shares how even a successful Black man can be stripped of respect and dignity due to skin color. The video quickly gains traction, and he receives overwhelming support from colleagues, friends, and people online. The response is so powerful that several well-known activists and bloggers share his story, and soon the media takes notice. In response to mounting public pressure, the police department is forced to open an internal investigation. Mike Randolph, learning of this, begins to feel his position threatened and vehemently denies any wrongdoing, claiming he was conducting a routine check. But the public doesn't buy his excuses, and many see this case as a symbol in the fight against systemic racism. For Darius, this becomes a turning point. He feels a surge of strength and decides to continue the fight, no matter the challenges. A year has passed since the incident with Mike Randolph. For Darius, it has been a year of major changes. The public support he received after posting his video helped him not only overcome his inner fears, but also made him a recognized figure. His company grows rapidly, and with a new wave of clients who share his values for justice, he opens several new offices in other cities. This strengthens his status as a successful entrepreneur, and his confidence grows. Meanwhile, things for Mike Randolph take a drastic turn for the worse. Following the internal investigation, he receives several reprimands for unprofessional behavior. His colleagues in the police department start to look at him with distrust, and under pressure from negative media coverage, his reputation crumbles. Eventually, when city officials decide to cut the department's budget, Mike is among those laid off. Feeling defeated, he begins searching for work in private security agencies, but his reputation makes it difficult to find a stable position. In desperation, Mike accepts the first available job, as a security guard at a major consulting firm. He's told that the new owner has recently acquired several office buildings and is hiring staff to strengthen security. Mike agrees, unaware of who owns the company. On the day of his interview, he walks into a spacious office adorned with modern decor, feeling a sense of unease as the receptionist asks him to wait. A few minutes later, Darius enters the room. At first, Mike doesn't recognize him, but when he meets Darius's cold gaze, he realizes who he's facing. In that moment, he understands that he is now interviewing with the same man he humiliated and insulted a year ago. Darius, maintaining his composure, greets Mike and calmly asks him to sit down. Mike feels a wave of shame and confusion. Darius speaks professionally, explaining the details of their potential work arrangement and emphasizing the strict corporate policy on respect and professionalism. He makes it clear that there is no place for prejudice or discrimination in his company. Mike understands he isn't in a position to negotiate and is forced to accept the terms. For him, the situation is not only humiliating but symbolic. Now he must answer to the man he once considered beneath him. After Mike begins working as a security guard at Darius's company, their paths cross frequently. Darius remains calm and respectful, but each interaction reminds Mike of the humiliation he once inflicted upon Darius. Mike realizes that his job now depends on the man he once openly looked down on. This feeling haunts him, and though he hides his frustration, he tries to avoid conflict and keeps a low profile. Sometime later, Darius holds a meeting for all company employees. He shares his vision for the future, emphasizing that his mission is to create not just a successful business, but a space where everyone respects one another. He stresses the importance of fairness and equality, stating that the company is committed to being an example of justice and respect. Mike feels the impact of these words deeply, causing him to reflect, though he initially suppresses these feelings and continues with his work. Soon, a vacancy for a senior security position opens up, and Mike submits an application, hoping it will help him improve his standing. However, when Darius reviews his resume, he calls Mike in for a personal conversation. In his office, looking Mike directly in the eye, Darius reminds him of the roadside incident and the derogatory comments Mike once made. He says he won't forget the humiliation, but adds that it's not enough reason to deny him the promotion if he proves himself worthy. Darius explains that he holds no grudge and that his principles don't allow him to become the person he despised. He tells Mike that everyone deserves a chance at redemption and respectful treatment. In that moment, Mike fully realizes the depth of his fall. The man he once hated and humiliated has risen far above him, showing genuine strength in forgiveness and fairness. After this meeting, Mike begins to change. He becomes more polite and respectful to his colleagues, determined to prove himself trustworthy. Over time, his attitude towards Darius shifts as he grows to respect him, not just as his boss, but as a man who rose above him in every way. The story ends with Mike approaching Darius with sincere gratitude, apologizing and admitting that this lesson changed his life. Darius, accepting his apology, replies that mutual respect is the key to true unity.